let's continue to talk about our local churches, because in Australia, our local churches may or may not have engaged in responding to creation justice. Some churches, as you spend time in Australia, you might see there might be solar panels on roofs. Some might have community gardens, but many will not. So what have you observed that churches locally can or are doing around the world?
So I think the important thing for churches is to start with your spirituality, because if you start with the actions, as I mentioned, then it tends to be a small group of people who will do something and we tick that box. So start with your spirituality. Look at your church year ahead. What were some of the things you could do? Maybe, for instance, you want to have a sermon series on mission, and you look at the 5 marks of mission, and then on the 5th of those Sundays you will consider care for creation. And maybe you want to look at some of your saints' days, like St. Francis, and have a special, we often do the blessing of the pets on a St. Francis Day, and it's very cute and fun. But how can you actually go a bit deeper and look at issues of biodiversity loss on St. Francis Day Sunday? And maybe you want to look at some of the important environmental days and say, how do we celebrate World Water Day? And many people don't know that there's 722 verses in the Bible that talk about water. And when did you ever hear a sermon on water? So can we bring that in?
Same with animals.
Exactly.
There's lots in the Bible about animals.
Many, and trees.
Yes.
And there's lots. So maybe think of having a creation centered or an environmental centered Sunday, World Environment Day. There are many, and a season that is correct for your church. You might consider dipping into the season of creation, maybe having one Sunday this year celebrating season of creation, have an ecumenical service followed by a cleanup. So plan something, make it challenging, fun, inspirational, different. You'll find the young people will really love it, and let them run with maybe doing a drama, or the Sunday school can do a dance, get the young people, the kids to make posters. Let the young people educate the adults. If you give them a 5-minute slot and teach the congregation about climate change and get the young people to do it, you'll find they'll do it brilliantly. So start with your spirituality, it's a good starting point. And then look at your congregation. What can you do? As you say, you have issues or you can audit your congregation and say, are we wasting water? Should we be considering putting in a water tank? Do we have space? What are we doing about our electricity, as you say? Can we put on solar panels or a solar water heater for the minister's house? There are actions that we can take to reduce our carbon footprint. What we've actually done in the Anglican Church of Southern Africa is we passed a lot of resolutions on some of these things, and we have now included in the canons of the church. So part of the archdeacon's role when he or she comes to the church and checks the books and how many people were in church is also to check the electricity bills and the water bills and make sure that they're going in the right direction, that we're reducing our usage. So with your local church, and do you have a green space? One of the things that would be amazing is if you could look from Google Earth and look down, and you would be able to see all the churches, because you'd say, wow, there's a green area, there's a garden there are trees there. We're helping to reduce the heat islands in our city. You know that like a tree reduces, in the shade of a tree you're reducing heat by 15 degrees. So how can we contribute to making our cities cooler and more livable places, as well as more beautiful, by greening them? Consider being part of the communion forest and joining in. Maybe there's a small area, protect the forests where you are. So those are some of the local areas, and I think connect them with your spirituality. So look at when you have confirmation, is there something that we can do with our confirmation candidates? Churches are giving kids maybe like a little succulent or a seedling on their confirmation, which is a beautiful link between your faith, because just as you must nurture your faith, you've just been confirmed, now it needs to be nurtured. The same thing, that plant needs to be nurtured and cared for, and that becomes the symbol of your confirmation. And then food gardens, are we teaching people to grow their own food? In the States, they have what they call good news gardens, which is lovely. So, and they have a sign, so that if the church has a good news garden where they're growing food, it's got this beautiful, brightly coloured good news garden thing. Across Africa, we have this thing called God's Way of Farming, which is linking gardening with our call. So just as I'm called to pray for my neighbour who's sick, I'm also called to heal the earth which is sick. So as I put my compost onto the earth and as I grow my own vegetables, that's God's way of farming. So linking gardening with your spirituality. And then from the spirituality to the local actions, what can I do in my community? Is there a polluted area, or there's maybe a dump site, or an area that could, a small garden could be put in, greening those urban spaces in our concrete jungles. How can the church take part in that? And then the third area is around advocacy. What are the issues around climate justice or public transport, or the environmental things that I need to be pushing on? One of the big ones for us at the moment, as you may know, that through the United Nations there are negotiations taking place at the moment for a global treaty around plastic pollution. So now is the time to push what you once said to the Australian government, to say these are the things that we would like to see in a plastic treaty. This is doable. Let's push now to reduce the amount of plastic that is going into the ocean. And then the other thing is that at every year when the nations of the world go to the COP, the International Climate Change Conferences, each government has a pledge that we call the nationally determined contribution. It's a pledge that country makes to contributing to fighting climate change. So educate yourself about what the Australian government is doing and push them to do more.
Well, there's a lot of ideas there, and I would encourage you to get in touch with us at Anglican Overseas Aid and tune into the season of creation, because every year Rachel and other fabulous leaders around the world put together resources so that you don't have to come up with that ideas for a service or even content for preaching the word, because others are already doing some of that resourcing and you can tap into that. There are wonderful resources for churches that might want to do some audits of their own, everything from plastics in events through to how your building and grounds may be operating. So get in touch and we can help direct you to some of those wonderful resources and help you navigate what it might look like for your church, because it is really different between rural and regional parts of our country to urban areas. In some areas, local councils might be really active, and that is a beautiful witness of our local churches partnering with things that are already taking place in the communities. And for other communities, meeting with your local council might be a really new activity, or your federal member of parliament. But again, get in touch and we would love to give you some tips and help you if that is a new thing to do, because it is surprising how few people do meet with their elected representatives, and to have the church do that and have a gracious and informed conversation and build relationship and share the cares of the church, what is on your heart, is a really big step. And you don't have to have all the policy answers, you don't have to be an expert, but taking a step together is really powerful. So I encourage you to tap into some of those resources and ideas.